Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
As I was telling before, I'm going to participate, Adrián Ferrandis Martínez, and as well Mar Ortega Rey. We are going to share our presentation. First of all, I would like to add to the solidarity shown by the other participants towards the Ukrainian people. We have to be conscious that we are here today talking about how to planify the development of our societies and rural areas and conservation. And we have another situations linked to the imperialist questions, such as where the distraction is a central element. I would like to highlight these questions. We are going to focus on the questions related to the ESCAPE project. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to participate in this peer learning workshop. ESCAPE is a project focused, as the other participants have told, in identify those shrinking areas with the objective of defining or updating the new project and generate new situations and support the European policies. We have to highlight that the materials used today are the result of the different work and our colleagues in Budapest were responsible for this work, Katalin Kovacs and Gergelita Gai. I would like to mention them because they are the collaborators of this part, especially this part linked to the cases of study. We are going to focus on the specific situation and we are going to try to adjust to the time slots. We're going to be as brief as possible. In the first place, we have tried to identify the different realities, to make a mapping of the different realities, to have a general situation of the European level. We have chosen different zones of Bulgaria, Croatia, Hungary, Poland, Germany, and each country presents different characteristics, and we evaluate different questions related to new dynamics of globalization, also different elements linked to the urbanization processes, which have been key factors of this moving of the population towards the countries. We have also the legacy of the different negative dynamics of these territories that were a negative factor for these countries. And also we had in count the elements of dynamism at the economic level between others. We selected different cases of study and we put a focus on them for our project. We are going to organize our presentation in 2 different sectors. In the first part, we are going to try to identify these different elements detected at European level in the different rural areas. And we are going to try to identify the different elements of disadvantage or negative elements in the different processes of contraction of the rural areas. We made an analysis where we added different variables, spatial elements, economic questions, political questions, demographic questions, social questions, and also elements linked to globalizations and others. Regarding the location aspects, we have zones where the periphery is a negative aspect, and in these urban centers feel in disadvantage. One thing that I would like to highlight in Spain specifically, Ortega will also speak about that, and we emphasize, is what we call the shadow effect. Is this process where rural areas links the different scales of analysis at the European level are remaining the shadows in comparison with these other areas that have contraction. This happens in Spain because, for example, the level of analysis linked to the different municipalities in Spain, we live in a reality where we have win zones and losing zones. Main in the coastal areas and with negative dynamics. This is a situation where at the same time we have the main rural areas linked to the GIs. This shadow effect makes that these areas are not really considered in the statistics, and in the sense we had to adapt. And in this case, we are talking about the Alma Strat in Castellón, which would be the key location and our domain of analysis. There are another questions linked to distances, the lacking of connections, generalized at a European level. And if we talk about the main components of rural shrinking or contractions, we would like to make a focus on new technologies and also to reduction of social relations in business structures and others. If we talk about economic questions, I would like to highlight these restrictions linked to a lacking of entrepreneurship spirits centered in the metropolitan areas, the shadow areas that are left behind of these policies. We have another policies that have made that the economic evolution of these areas is left behind. These elements are linked to the heritage of these areas. And in the end, we have a lack of dynamism and young people that make that these structures become old and less dynamic. And in the end, more problems are generated. We have the decline linked to basic services, education services, secondary education, let's say, to quality service, is a healthcare service at the social level, and important questions at the general level. We have historical elements linked to the change of structures, where we have questions that depending on the areas. If we talk about the center of Europe, we have the change in the productive system that make that these countries have particular dynamics. And we have the north of Europe, where they have suffered the effects of the economic crisis. which has limited their policy implementation in these shrinking areas. I would like to highlight these fundamental questions which define our framework of analysis, especially the North and the South, our domain that interests us. And this decline, these contractions is linked to that combination of geographical element and spatial element that makes that this area have contractions. Location processes with verification effects, urbanization processes, which has improved the growing of big cities in the south of Europe, especially in most industrialized areas. And at the economic level, this zone are left behind of the investment dynamics. And we have peripheral zone, which are left behind in comparison with industrialized areas. I'm going to give the floor to Mar Ortega. Good morning. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I want to talk about what we can highlight about the Almaestrat case. I will put it on full screen. This case is representative of the zones of the south of Europe, and this is which makes this case interesting. Such as Michael showed before, this is an area where the projections of population are presented as an area where we are going to have an augmentation of population. This is a municipality not considered as a rural region, rural area, but as an intermediate area where we hope that the population will be in augmentation. But when we put it into analysis, we see that these population dynamics are not representative of what is really happening. So the first thing we are going to see today is the problems and challenges of these zones, the initiatives afterwards. We're going to see what the local agents think about it. I want to thank the agents that we have interviewed. I know they are in our public, so thanks. And I want to share a reflection about the role of the European policies. One of the main problems is that Almaestrat is on the losing side of a prosperous regions. We see in red the zones that are losing population, and we see that we are seeing a process of migration in this area because there is a concentration of investments, infrastructures, communications in all the coastal zone, but in the interior areas where we have more green infrastructures, we have migration because there is few perspectives of work because the economy is based on traditional sectors with few added value, and we have this circle. This shrinkage starts till the 60s, but it continues nowadays. When we see the components of this reduction of the population, we see in light green the part of the population shrinking linked to the natural growing of the population. before the economic crisis in 2008, the numbers were positive, but afterwards, the total was negative. So we have to take this in account. Nevertheless, we see that this effect maintains a lot in the time. This is a zone that is not so far, not too close. So people don't lose social relationship. That's why we have this phenomenon. People can go to search for job opportunities to the most economic developed countries, but they can go back to the countries of origin. Which is important also is the stigmatization of the rural areas as a less successful, which is considered less successful. And this is a domain of where the policies would have to act. Having in account the time that is left for the presentations, the agents remarked that it's important to have an economic differentiation. And this is an issue that was highlighted by all the actors. It is important to have that in mind because there is differentiation between the different areas. It is important that the school stays open, but it is also important that the bar in small village does not close because it is the only meeting place. This is a phrase from Janet Sergarra, Director of the Evaluation Anti-Depopulation Agenda. We have also to think in the social aspect, social dynamism, and making the small business that contribute to the different service remain open, to not exist the time. I will share a final reflection is the lack of support at all levels remarked by highlighted by all actors. In the recent years, we had important advances, and the existing responses are fragmented and are not effective because the causes of shrinkage are multifactorial. And there is the difficulty of have a well-organized response because the economic services and different models must have taken account in this complex model. And at the end, we have to avoid the population getting old. I'm going to have the next slide. I'm going to talk about the opportunities of the GIs linked to natural areas. There are zones where we have to improve, because if not, GIs cannot be maintained, and we have to dynamics of degradation at economical and social and at an ecosystem level, and also because they are reservoirs of CO2. And we have to understand that the rural areas must not have just a space to maintain as it were so logical, and they must be productive zones where people have opportunities and the resources, and we can profit of their resources. We have to put in value those economic sectors with more potential: agriculture, tourism, and why not those industrial process of innovation with a structure focus on innovation, sustainability, and respect of the fundamental values of their social structures and their relations with the nature that made them still remain. It is important for the people to have opportunity and link GAs with rural area and urban areas where we have the dynamics. There is a factor of complementarity and opportunity in improving the GAs as backbones, where rural areas can find a change of their population dynamics. Thank you very much for your attention.